just sitting down and just listening. I was there to actually listen, and I paid rapt attention to the whole proceedings. And I'll tell you, overall, just listening to the judgment being read out, and it was disappointing, not even about the outcome, but one, in the way that it was being read, two, in the kind of mannerism, in the intonation, in the kind of words that were being read at. And I'll tell you that was my first time of being at a sitting where judgment was being read out in such a manner. And I was expecting, those play of words. I've read certain judgments, like, reading the one of like Lord Denning and all of that and what they've said about words. So that in its own way, just listening to it wasn't as interesting and one would have wanted it to be. But that's by the way. On the whole issue was the fact that the judges, in my own opinion, and I'm a witness because I was directly there on that day, is that the justices sounded more like counsels to the respondents than they did like justices. And I know a lot of people have been saying things like, oh, do you think they will charge you contempt of court and all of that? We have opinions. I must air our opinions. When it came to issue of the judgment, when it's related to the petitioners, you could almost feel the anger. The body language was like angry, the intonation, the words that were live proceedings. I wasn't in court all throughout the trial. So I came in, I wasn't in the country, so I was able to attend the one of the judgment. So first of all, that's why they say when you're talking about justice, it must not only be done, but it must also be seen to be done. And one of the things that all of this conversation would have cleared would have been when citizens were making demands that there should be live transmission from the courts during the tribunal sittings. If that had been out, every one of us would have been able to see this watery evidence that were put in, or watery case, or whatever the name that it's called, that was put forth. But first of all, that wasn't allowed to happen. And then it is a judgment where it is a justices now saying this is what they have arrived at that was allowed to happen. Apart from that is also the fact that there is where they said the way and manner in which INEC had been served in terms of getting the evidence, the materials they were supposed to, counsels to the petitioners were supposed to have access to, that they didn't get it. One of the things that we also have to look at is that the court gives instruction, the court gives its orders to INEC, and then INEC doesn't fulfill it. And at the end of the day, we've seen the court just not doing anything about it and just moving on. And this is not something that is just peculiar to the issue of whether it's INEC being asked to allow petitioners' counsels to have access to certain materials. And I could say we're also where amongst the justices, when they were reading out that judgment, where they said that, I think it was Justice Haruna Samani who had read out on the fact that any credible candidate should not rely on INEC for their results and things like that. We've seen it time again and again where courts in Nigeria will give order. Either the executive or institutions will not obey these orders, and it's almost as if it's business as usual, and they just continue what they're doing without really looking at it at the fact that this is an affront on them. It's one thing for us to talk about technicalities and all of that. But it's another thing for us to say there were people, the people who were on the petitioners' council, there were a lot of sons there. There are people who had, this is not their first time of doing a trial, election petition. And for say that all of them, every one of them, that they didn't file these things the way they're supposed to be filed. I'm not a lawyer. Probably the lawyers will be the ones to answer that. But what was most instructive was the fact that the whole justice seems to be on the side of the respondents more than they were just being neutral. And for me, just being, even in the court, the body language, the words, it's almost as if they came alive whenever it was issue of the petitioners that were being discussed. That's not the way it's supposed to be. And I think it was Lord Denning that said that the law is supposed to be there to protect the weak and not to protect the strong. And we must begin to, and for me, that's why over the years, and this is not my first time, time. And it's not because of the result of what has happened. But the fact is that we need to begin to look at the independence of the judiciary and let us know, do we have, the way we have state capture, do we have also a judicial capture? Do we have, how do we, the things that from all of this that we all need to be asking ourselves is that, how do judges get into office? What is the process that bring them in? Is it a transparent process? Is it a process where it's plagued with nepotism and